Hi there. Yes, I promise I have a face, but I'm aiming this at the soil. I figure most of these videos you guys would rather see the plants than see me, and that's what's important, right? So today we're talking about planting your tomatoes and actually planting them sideways or crooked or some sort of variation of that. So let's talk first about why you would want to do that. The reason that you'd want to do that, tomatoes in nature actually in the wild grow sprawled on the ground. They don't grow upright like we grow them. They do kind of climb and get around, and they vine and they do their own thing, but they actually will kind of go around along the ground. And when they do that, they send out what are called adventitious roots. So those are roots that form not from these little hairs, but from cells in the epidermal layer of the tomato. They have a name, if I can remember it, parenchyma cells. Probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but suffice it to say there's cells in there. This is what you see when sometimes you see on your tomato stems kind of these bumpy, almost worm-like looking growths that happen usually more toward the bottom of the tomato plant. That is those cells reaching out, trying to grow additional roots, adventitious roots for the tomato to access more resources for it. So if you live in a humid area or your year is particularly wet or humid, you may see that happening even kind of quite a ways above the ground. That's kind of those roots reaching out, trying to get more moisture, reacting to the moisture in the air. But you can take advantage of that. And when you're planting your tomatoes, there's two ways to do it. Now you can either plant your tomatoes much deeper than what you think would be, kind of logical. Most of us would say, oh, we're going to plant to the top of the pot, or maybe slightly deeper, but that's it, right? That's what we do with most plants, because if you're planting them and burying the stem, you're usually not doing a vegetable plant or a flower plant any favors, and you're usually going to cause some stem rot issues and whatnot. But that's not the case with tomatoes and some other plants like broccoli, because they can actually grow some roots from the bottom of this plant. So for tomatoes, this does a couple of things. One, it increases that access to water and soil nutrients in the ground. So picture this, instead of one mass of roots going down and somewhat out, but mostly just down within the perimeter of the plant, now you have this happening from whatever section is buried in the plant. So we've gone from about 2 inches to about 5 or 6 if we're laying it sideways. Now I'm going to lay this sideways and kind of up. I know this is going to seem a little weird because you're kind of laying this on the ground, but the plant will start to go up as it adjusts to this. Like I said, another option is to bury it straight down like you normally would, but to bury it deep, like let's say, another 4 or 5 inches deep. So first thing you're going to do, dig your trench in your designated area. This is one of those things that's it's not a complicated thing to do. It's kind of more knowing about it, learning about it, trying it out. Kind of dig this, if you're going to lay it on its side, kind of dig it at an angle so it is still going upright. Now with these biodegradable pots, I usually like to rip them away a little bit. Don't want to do too much damage to the roots, but just loosen them up, let them get through. And then you're going to pinch off any of those leaves that are going to be below the soil, because what we're trying to do is turn those cells, which in the tomato plant, they can become what cells the plant needs. And in this case, it's going to need roots, and it's going to be inclined to grow roots because the stem is in the ground and it's where it's moist and it's where it's going to access that moisture. So we're just going to pinch those off. Now again, we could go really deep and right up to the bottom of these leaves here, or we could lay it on its side, which is what I'm going to do today. And then I'm just going to fill in around it, making sure that all of the stem that I want underground is underground and the plant itself is above. Be careful not to bend and break this back. You can train it a little more as it grows, but in the beginning, just kind of leave it and let it go. I'm actually going to pinch these blossoms off too, because for the time being, I want the focus to be on plant growth, on root, on getting set up to grow, and I'd rather take that stress and energy off that plant. So that is it. This is an heirloom variety that I'm planting here in this bed. It's a Costuloto Genovese. You can find more about that in several of our articles. It actually found its way onto several of our top variety lists. You know, I was looking for something a little fun to play with. This was recommended as a good sauce tomato, good heirloom tomato. You know, I trust the Italians to know their tomatoes, and I'm going to go for it and see how it does. So now that the tomato is planted, keeping an idea of where I've got the roots, which is basically from this point back that, say, 5 inches or so, I'm going to set my tomato cage. I am going to use a tomato cage in here because this year I'm growing a limited quantity in a raised bed. So I'm going to go with the cage this time so that I don't have a lot of setup. If I was planting a whole row like I do in a lot of years, I would probably choose like the cattle panel trellis system. We do have an article here on the website, by the way, with some trellising options that I've tried and liked. And I really liked the cattle panels because it was easy. The panels are firm, they're solid, they're sturdy, they're there. And all you got to do is go out and tie up to them over the course of the summer. You know, several others, I've done stakes throughout the years. Stakes work great too. I really liked the Florida weave one year when I did that. But that's more if you're going to do all one variety and they're determinants so that the size is staying consistent. You know, maybe that's a video for another day, but it's a little bit about on that. And again, that article is here on the site, which gives some of that. So now, like I said, keeping in mind, I'm just going to set my cage over with roughly that plant in the center, and I'm trying not to hit that root area. I've got it straddled here, and the reason I'm setting the cage now, even though obviously this doesn't need this today, is because it's going to grow quick, and we want it in place when it does need it. And those roots are going to start growing quick, and pretty soon they're going to be out to here. So put your cage, put your stake, whatever you're using, put it in when you plant the tomato, and that way you're not disturbing or cutting into any roots by coming back and doing that later. So there we have it. That's it. Looks like a pretty normal short tomato, even though we know that's got about 6 inches of stem underground. But this should be a good, firmly well-anchored tomato that's going to have a lot of root surface to continue to support it and produce fruit for us. So that's it. Happy tomato growing and good luck.